Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. Tonight we're exploring inside the Narcissist's bag of tricks. I'll be covering one of the tools that they have in their bag of tricks, of which can manifest itself in numerous ways. That trick in question is called Covert Manipulation. It's a staple in their lives. Before going into this, I'm referencing back to something I had read in this book a long time ago, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People by George Simon, Jr., Ph.D. He had brought up the interesting fact that these creatures we're talking about who are toxic are different from the rest of us that involve if we do something we shouldn't, there's guilt. If we're about to do something we're worried about, there's fear, any number of those types of things. These creatures don't have that. It's difficult for those of us who do to imagine what their life could be like without such things. To regular folk, those things would be part of a healthy, well-adjusted human being. With the narcissist, sociopath, psychopath, borderline, cluster B creature, they're a little different. Their brains are not wired the same way. What they're doing is considered covert aggression, which refers to manipulation, which is what we're covering here. They're doing it deliberately, and you'll see in these two examples how that looks in real life. But if you examine the behavior, you can see it for what it is, which is covert, which means secret. I always thought of it as covered. Well, it's secret, covered up, whatever. Aggression. Aggression is doing something combative against another person. What would be considered overt is walking up to a stranger, calling them a name, making fun of their MAGA hat, and slapping them in the face. That would be overt aggression. Covert is what we're going to cover next. The first example I have is typical within the idealization phase, which is the first phase that the cluster B narcissistic creature will engage in right off the bat. That includes the love bombing, but the part I'm focusing on tonight is constant contact. In today's modern day, we have text messages. So that can come in the form of, face it, pretty much pointless, non-stop text messages all day. It's very common for these creatures to text any mundane detail of their life. Oh, hi, I have to go to the dentist and I'm going to do this, and just nonsense that nobody cares about. What I've seen is these creatures will utilize that texting device, and it's probably gold to them because they don't have to put on an act for it. They just have to use their fingers. Let's say you have come across someone somewhere who showed interest in you, and maybe you have interest in as well. Phone numbers are exchanged. Social media is used. If you're a real person with a full set of emotions, it may look like this. You found something cute about the person. You're surprised because this person seems really assertive or aggressively pursuing you right off the bat. So you get a barrage of just message after message after message. You'll notice if you think critically that many of these messages are pointless. They're shallow, superficial, but they do say one thing, which is,
I'm thinking of you. I want you to interact with me.
This can be annoying. It also is persistent. Sometimes it even involves their little control too. They let you know the rules without telling you overtly. Like if you don't respond back to a text within 5 minutes, you get a hateful one back saying you must be too busy for me or something like that, which is designed to condition you to think, oh no, if I get a text from this person, I've got to respond immediately. That's control as well. Manipulation. It all fits under the same umbrella. You're getting all this attention. Of course, it's pointless usually, but you're still getting it. You might be thinking, oh, this feels great. Someone's interested in me. Oh, and that's what they're trying to do. They will just keep it going, even when there's nothing being discussed. On and on and on. We may feel that this is harmless. This is cute. This person really must like us. Isn't that nice? We will realize that we don't know this person that well. The messages we're getting from the person are typically pointless. But there will be instances when certain things are brought up which are probably lifted off someone else they heard someone else say in order to make themselves appear to be a real human being. But if you're in their radar and they're going after you, what looks harmless actually ends up being a data harvesting operation for this creature. Because you're getting small talk, how are you? Oh, you look great today, and stuff like that. So you're just responding back, oh, thanks. When you keep getting these shallow messages, sometimes you may decide that you're going to say something meaningful at least, or you may not have anything to say, so you may just reveal something personal about yourself, like you might mention, oh, well, I'm getting my house repaired. You just throw in anything because you don't have that much information to give to a pretty much stranger that looked nice last night. So you'll just play it by ear. Over time, they continue this. You may just think you're having meaningless small talk. They are studying your messages, looking for things it can use. If you think of that movie, Mean Girls, when they're trying to get the mean girl, what was her name?
Regina.
Regina George. Ugly slut. In the one scene, they're trying to take her down, and the little girls get together and say, what we've got to do is listen to her secrets, and then just wait for one we can use. So that's kind of the concept these creatures work under, where you just say a bunch of nonsense as well, but every so often you'll give something real. It's kind of like a tactic they're using because they know eventually something will come up that they can use. You may early on say something like, oh, I didn't watch that movie because I can't stand clowns. They scare me to death. You'll just be saying that just to say it. You don't realize you're dealing with a creature who's also an actor and a con artist. It's going to note that in its little brain file. It may keep a notebook, may just keep it in its phone. It will keep records of things. So if you state, oh, I'm terrified of clowns, it's going to remember that. It may respond with,
oh, I think they're ugly too,
or something. But that's an example of something they would put off to the side. Eventually you'll provide more and more. The covert aggression here is these things are being logged in this person's memory. Say you do see each other and you start getting together more, and then you uncover something horrifying it's done. Then that list of data will become used. You may find a scary looking dressed up clown creature pounding on your door at midnight to terrify you. I doubt that would happen, but you know what I mean, I hope. Something you fear they'll make sure happens. If you ask them, did you make that happen? They'll say,
oh no, I know how you can't stand spiders.
Or whatever it may be.
You told me you were terrified. I had nothing to do with that. What appears to be a box load of spiders from a pet store let loose in your apartment. I don't know where that came from.
You get used to it, it just becomes like a habit, and you're usually thinking that none of this information will ever be used against you. That's the furthest thing on your mind. You think you're trying to engage in small talk in someone who's interested in you, that you may also be interested in as well. Anyway, that's how this is dangerous. As far as guarding yourself against it, I would just be careful if you're getting those types of messages that are shallow from a stranger that gives a lot of compliments, which makes it hard to turn it away. Because it's not like they're sending you hateful, mean messages. That'll come later. These messages are innocent. They give the illusion of some little child who's just found someone they're interested in for the first time. It'll look like that on many occasions. I would just keep it to the level they're at. I wouldn't be offering a bunch of new information, at least until you know the person better. These people hold on to this information. They use it when it becomes necessary to fulfill their evil plan. Because what I just told you is not a nice thing to do, to pretend to be someone's friend, gather all the information you can on them, store it, interact with them, and find an opportunity when they start to figure you out as a con artist, then use something against them that you know will horrify them. That's just creepy, evil behavior. On to the next example, how this covert manipulation was used. In this case was when I was involved in the long-term relationship that lasted for a little over 11 years. There was a time of transition where the devalue and discard was, well, the devalue had been going on for a while, I realize now. I told you in the last video about how that worked. But eventually, it completely dropped its mask. This was a person who was someone I'd lived with. I'd always come home every single night after my work. I'd always slept in my home in that bed. And for all those years, never disappeared or anything. That got to the point at the end where I was suspecting the creature of doing specific things with a specific person, which turned out to be 100% accurate. It went through stages. It was a slow, evil devalue. It was obvious the things that were going on, where the person would be at this other person's apartment, not answering its phone for hours, and it was just about to say,
okay, I want you out of this house by this date.
And it started doing things that were out of character for it, which I may have mentioned a long time ago. There was a concert coming up. It was actually Britney Spears, which I specifically recalled several months prior being told,
Britney Spears is coming. We're going to go see her.
A few months later that changed to,
oh, I'm going to see Britney Spears.
And I said, you are? Well, who are you going with? And this was during the time I knew it was messing with this creature that it ended up running off with that then attacked it. I noticed how it went from we're going to I'm going, and then I'd be questioning who, and the answer was a vague,
a group of people.
I became suspicious one particular afternoon when I was home. It was at work. A package arrived at the front door, and I opened it. And it was for the tour. 2 little backpacks, 2 little certificates, 2 little this, 2 little that. It was a thing for 2 people. It was telling me it was going to this concert. We'd gone to many concerts together over the previous years. Usually I initiated them as well because I have a large musical library of performers and bands I like. This was all new. There'd never been a concert that it had gone to with some other person. And yet, when I asked who the other person is, it was a group. Well, I knew who it was. It was this one particular person, which it turned out to be this one particular person. But we've covered in other videos how all the abuse goes on when I peeped together the evidence and say, I know this is happening this way, it has to be, and I'm told,
oh no, you're wrong, you're paranoid,
all that crap, which none of is true, that is abusive. In this case, it was claiming it was going with this group, and they sold tickets in groups of 2, which again, the excuses are ridiculous. It's obvious. You bought 2 tickets, and one of them is not mine. I mean, that's pretty simple. They'll say anything they can to try to avoid the facts. On top of that new behavior, I was told,
oh, when I go to that concert, I won't be coming home that night.
Which was a first as well. It was always at home when I was there, and I was always there. This is all new ground. I was immediately skeptical, thinking, okay, this has never happened before. What is really going on? Who is the other person? You got 2 tickets, and finally, after ridiculous amounts of time, it was admitted it was this person that I knew it was. And I was thinking, why did you go through all that foolishness where I had to keep pointing out how I knew it was this person when it was the whole time, and now you're saying it? That's a different story. The point was I was furious because there was nothing I could do. It was like the most horrific situation I could ever think of. You moved in with the person, you put all your stuff there, and it turns on you, or it becomes evil or wicked, and it does the types of things that I'm describing. It's like a nightmare. You never want to be in that situation. You want to make sure before you sign on a dotted line with the person at home to make sure they're not that kind of person that would leave you like that. You'd think that they would at least make a negotiation, discuss things in a certain way, or at least organize something nice, but this was all surprise, and it was slowly revealed over time. Eventually, of course, the full truth came out, and I was thinking, I wasted all that energy trying to prove my point, and it was true all along. Great. Shows you how evil these creatures are, though. They don't seem to care that you're struggling with this. They like it. They get the supply from seeing you squirm, seeing you piece together the evidence, and insisting, oh, this has to be true.
Then hear them tell you,
oh no, you're wrong, you're paranoid.
It's just sickening. The concert came, and I wasn't asked to go, even though I had that day off, which was strange. And I was starting to feel like this is sickening. This is going on, and I have no power to control it. It's not being honest about what it's doing, so we can't really discuss what it's doing and then move from there because that's part of their control game. If they don't admit to their wrongdoing, then if you try to discuss their wrongdoing and how it's going to affect your future, they'll say you're crazy, there is no wrongdoing. And there, of course, is. They're on their own side, not yours. I was just an object for the moment. That moment ended after the decade, but I still lived there. I was realizing I had to get out of there. I just had not gotten to that point yet. I was coming up with suggestions, well, maybe I should do this, and looking for different places, and it was just a horrible thing because all my entire life I'd never been in this situation where I was being ejected from a place. I'd been on my own for many years prior to this, so it was quite a shock to the system. I became angry because I was powerless, and we've talked about counter manipulation. Sasha Sloan talks about it, or she has before, and we all get criticized for mentioning it, probably by the creatures themselves. Well, tough. I engaged in a little. This was crossing a line when it did the overnight thing. That night of the concert, I would call the number and there would be no answer. Trying to text, where are you at? What's going on? And I'd get no responses. So I figured, okay, this is it. The next weekend, I started a new thing. I figured, well, I'm going to go out on my own. It did, so I'm going to. And I did. I went out to a nightclub that I enjoyed. Who knows where it was? It wasn't there. But while I was there, a person I'd spoken to before had invited me to a after-hour event. I figured, perfect. I did. I went to it, which meant I would not be coming home as I usually have. I didn't bother to call this creature because of what it was doing with its life. I figured, that's the past now. I don't need to worry about that person. And I stayed at the overnight event. This is where the covert aggression came in. I was going home, and my phone had a message from my parents. I called back. I said, what's going on? What did you call? And I heard the most shocking revelation from the father, who said, oh, well, the creature, which, keep in mind, this creature in all these 11 years had never once, ever called my parents. Either one of them, for any reason ever. However, this particular occasion, I wasn't at home. It was obviously affected by this. Calling my parents, stating,
TJ didn't come home last night. I'm worried about him.
well, that made them worry. I said, oh, forget. That person that called you, that is a fake. Do not believe them. You know what? Things are not... And I would tell the way it was, which I hadn't at this point. My life was changing, so I had to tell them. But I did, and just thought that was sickening, because there's no need to worry them. They're not involved. It had no business telling them any of this. He didn't come home. I'm worried. You see, this person wasn't worried. This is what they do. They deliberately put on these acts to make themselves appear to be a human being and concerned, while they're really fulfilling some sickening agenda. If you've experienced anything like this, it's disgusting, and it's probably best to sneak out quietly. Be free again.
I am the most gorgeous narcopath of your life.
I know you want to hear more of my confessions. So, honey, they're coming for you. I know that we did date for a long time, and you just kept finding me in other people's beds. Each time I told you, oh, it didn't mean anything, it just happened, expecting your instant forgiveness. I got it a few times, but But later you started getting annoying because you kept asking about it, saying that
If you really love me like you say you do, then how could you ever even end up in that other person's bed?
and I just said it just happened. I had no control. Well, honey, that was a big lie. Just so you know now, I knew what I was doing. You weren't supposed to find out. That's the problem. Since you found out, I just said,
Oh, I didn't mean for it to happen.
you tried to show your goodwill by trying to influence me not to get into such things in the future. Then, after all your efforts, you'd find out again I was seen in somebody else's bed. Well, honey, you always said that I never learned from my mistakes. I don't see it that way. I don't see it as me making mistakes. The only mistake was you finding out about it. See? If you would have minded your own business like you should have, then you'd never know what I was doing. But because you had to be nosy and stick your little nose where it didn't belong, you found out about what I was doing. That wasn't part of my plan. The only thing I learned from it was I need to be a little bit more discreet in the future so you don't find out. And it worked the next 10 times too. It wasn't until the 13th until you finally caught me again and said it was over. I lured you back with my Hoover, and you took it because of me, how hot I am. Oops, resist this beauty. Then I dumped you because you deserved it. How dare you dump me first? No one dumps the Narcopath. Cut my tongue out, I've been caught out like a giant juggernaut. Happy hours, golden showers, on a cruise to freak you out. We could fly a helicopter, nothing left to talk about. Entertain you, celebrate you, I'll be back to frame you when I grow up. I'll be stable when I grow up on the table. Trying hard to fit among you, floating out to Wonderland. Unprotected, got 'em pregnant, damn the consequences when I grow